another First Class Cricket Academy podcast. In this podcast today, we are as usually joined by Raj, Darren, and Theo. But we have got, luckily, a special guest that has come in today, former England player Vince Wells. How are you doing, Vince?
Very good, thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you for coming on. So Vince started his career at Kent and then moved to Leicestershire in around 1992 and finished with one season in Diamond 2003. Is that right, Vince?
Yeah, a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And then also was luckily picked in the 1999 World Cup squad that was for England, which means that was that must be felt quite an achievement being picked for a team like that.
Yeah, I think all the time you're playing county cricket, you've always got your goals and that you want to achieve. And although it's later on in my career, it was, you dream of doing it. So when the opportunity came, it was wonderful. Very much in my role is that at the end of the day, we've got to remember why we're all here and why we're playing is because we got a love and enjoyment from it. So that to me is a massive part of it. But I'm also, although it's evolved and changed, and I'm also very, very much, I know Raj said it as well, the basics are still very important to me. It's all right doing all these good shots, but if the basics aren't there with your batting to still keep balls out or rotate good balls and likewise have a consistent action to bowl, I don't think the success is going to be very sporadic.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting about the basics, and so I think that's something that FCCA trying. That's one of our main aims of trying to build a cricketer. Raj, going back onto the basics, we have touched on this before, but how important are they?
It's almost like building a building block. So if you want to build a 6-story building or a 7-story building, the foundation has to be really strong because otherwise the building is going to collapse. And same in cricket. All the top players in the world have got solid foundations, solid fundamentals. That is the base on which you build your game.
Theo, coming to you, Theo. Basics as a coach.
Yeah, I mean it's like Raj said, it's the foundation to any sort of player. Now Vince touched on as well, but also the earlier you can get a youngster grooving the basics, having the basics set in stone. If they've done that before the sort of age of sort of 12, 13, then as they progress quicker, they'll have their growth spurt and those basics will be set in place. Teaching a youngster the basics when they're 14, 15, 16, when they've already played a lot of cricket is much harder. So really getting them in early, getting the foundations, the fundamentals, will give you that foundation to build from, as Raj touched on there.
Darren, that's quite a good point. Do you think you should start early with the basics, or do you think you should let them go out, enjoy their cricket, and then start the basics, or start the basics as early as possible?
I think start the basics as early as possible, and because unlike other team sports, cricket's a very individually based team sport, in which case I try and explain to youngsters that it's a very, very boring game if you can't keep the good ball out and you can't bat long enough to enjoy yourself, if you like. And if you don't teach the basics, there's always a danger when they get older, they don't enjoy cricket, they move on to something else because they can't bat long enough, because they can't bowl at a target. And which might be oversimplifying it, but that's the way I look at it.
Yeah. And Vince, just coming to when you were just before you got selected for the World Cup, did you have thoughts that you were going to be selected? How was that done? Was it a phone call, or how was it done?
To be completely honest, that I was very lucky. To be honest, when I first got called up, I was away playing some club cricket in New Zealand, and I came home before Christmas, and my wife said, "Oh, look, had a phone call." Being the back end of my career, it's a bit of a surprise, to be honest. And then following the phone call, a month later, there I am in Australia, being part of the Carlton United series, I think it was called then. But what was really weird, I think, and very much now with all the different facets of the game that's important. I actually, without boring everyone, my sporting journey started very early on, and I happened to be a good footballer. So I was involved on pro football books up until the age of 16, and my school teacher At 13, got me playing a bit of club cricket, and I actually started off as a wicket keeper, and made my debut for Kent in a Sunday league game as a keeper as well. But my coach Bob Woolmer, at the time there was a chap called Steve Marsh who had a great career, Paul Farbrace, who probably everyone knows as well. So my chances of breaking into that was going to be pretty tough. So I used to muck around in the nets and chuck a few balls down bowling and that. And Bob Woolmer luckily saw something and they said, "Look, I think we can work on your bowling." So I had 3 years overseas with Bob in South Africa doing that. Played a massive part of my career, but moved forward to that particular World Cup when they was doing the squads, and I think we limited to 16 in the side. Someone brought up the fact that I'd been a keeper. So then next minute I was out the back at Adelaide doing some keeping. Rolled forward, I went out to Pakistan and kept in a 50 over game there, and that was something that actually got me into the side, because when you're picking 16 players, to have me that could bat, bowl, and the keeping played a big part. It meant an extra player could be put in. So all those different facets, that particular one that very early on came back to be a great help for me.
I mean, you mentioning Bob Woolmer there. I'm a cricket badger, as you know, and I was coaching in Cape Town, and I looked Bob up on the phone directory and called him, and he invited me to his place, and I went to his place, sat in his study, and he was on his laptop, and he asked me about my background and everything, and suddenly he started talking about grounds in India, like the Keenan wicket, the wicket at Cuttack, and all that sort of stuff. And believe me, without even having seen me play a ball, right? He saw my stats and he told me the type of player I was just by going through which wickets I had scored on and which wickets I hadn't. This guy was outstanding. And then he used to get me in for sessions with him, and I spent, I think, about a month around going around with him. It was unbelievable, that guy.
Yeah, no, brilliant. So ahead of his time, Raj, wasn't he?
Yeah. He was the first person who had actually mentioned that in one day cricket, in those days, obviously, whoever got more runs got the man of the match. Yeah. And he said, I don't think this is right, because the guy who was gone late at number 7 and got us 20 off 7 balls has got more impact in that game. Yes, the opening bat has set it up, but that guy has had more impact, because otherwise the game wouldn't have gone over the line. And his analysis of the game and people was outstanding. I'm sure you've had so much of time with him, but
I'd say he played a massive part of my career. And what you're saying there is, it was no surprise when he turned that Warwickshire side into such a successful unit, and just the way they played their cricket as well. So very, very lucky to have had him part of my career.
Raj, coming on to when you say you're coaching in, obviously you coach in Cape Town, but how is it different coaching in different overseas countries? What's different to coaching in England? Is there any particular fashion that's different, or?
Cape Town cricket is very similar to cricket back home, because they take it extremely seriously. I'll tell you a small incident. I was playing club cricket. First day I went into the nets, I played a ball, and my teammate was sledging me in the net. That's how competitive they are. Okay. And the nets used to be set up like 4 nets. You got the first team openers batting, second team openers batting, third team openers batting, fourth team openers batting. So almost it was like unconsciously, the guy who's behind you, who's trying to push you out, and everyone is playing seriously. No one is playing participating cricket. Everyone wants to play cricket to you know, go higher sort. That is one of the biggest challenges. One more thing I'll say early, I did 3 seasons there. Friday nights were a breeze for me. Unlike in England, where Friday nights I'm literally on the edge because I don't know which player is going to drop out from which team.
Hmm.
I did 3 seasons. I didn't have one pullout on a Friday night or Saturday morning.
Mm.
So that's a cultural difference, I think.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that's quite an interesting point. Theo, what do you so Raj was saying obviously different coaching in different countries, how it differs and how the attitude is different. Is there anything that you think coaching over here is is difficult in a way that obviously you've coached over here, you've obviously taught, but is anything over here that you've found that seems to be different?
I'd say, and I've had some experience of being in Australia, and it's similar to what Raj mentioned about South Africa, how it is very much about performance and wanting to win and becoming the best player you can be. I think in England, like it's from what I experienced with Raj, and I've worked for Raj for I've known him since I'm 9 years old, and working with guys like Darren and other guys at FCC, we all believe in the same thing. So the culture is really good there. So we know what we're coaching. We're doing this our way. From my experience of being out of that, because cricket does require such technical skill, you do need to be able to, like Vince and Raj mentioned, have the foundations of the game. You need more to spend more than 1 hour a week on practicing your batting or your bowling or your skills, and throughout the winter as well. The winter's where you sort of need to do your hard work and get the hours in, hit the amount of balls. The summer's just about playing as many games as you can, out in the middle, experiencing playing, bowling, batting under a bit of pressure. Whereas Darren mentioned earlier about the sense of fun. I think a lot of coaches here want to make it fun. They want to have kids coming back, which is important. You do need to make it. You do want them to come back and enjoy their cricket, but how you sort of balance the basics, doing the fundamentals with fun, is where sometimes it doesn't quite match up. So you sort of do a kid a disservice, and you make it fun. You do things. You play diamond cricket or whatever. You're hitting balls hard. It's great for them to see. But then when they get to a game time, you see they're still a bit behind where you'd like them to be at that age. So I think it's just balancing that up, balancing those two together. So you do get a bit of fun, but you also do get the level of level of technique improving, and then you have your fun in the middle. Raj always said to me, you have your fun after you've batted. When you're scoring 100, you enjoy it afterwards. You don't really enjoy it while you're doing it. So that's where you get your fun. That's, after a game when you get your friends coming up to you saying, well batted or well bowled. But to get there, you've got to do the hours in the sports hall. You've got to do the hours, in the nets and stuff. So that's my...
So Darren, Theo made a good point of saying at first class we have our own have their own way in going about it, own way in coaching. Do you think it's quite important? Different coaching academies have different ways in going about it.
Because there's always more than one way to do things, but I do very much believe in what Theo, Raj, and Vince have said. It's found early foundations, early basics. Get those right. And I noticed when I went to India with Raj, went to Kolkata for a week a few years ago, and that's what they're doing over there. So I can see where it comes from, and I think it is very, very important you get your basics nailed early. As Theo said earlier, not when you're 14, 15, when you're 10, 11. So you can enjoy the game, you can score runs, and it doesn't become a bit of a grind and you go somewhere else, as I said earlier, because you're not scoring runs once you're 13, 14, 15. You find another sport.
So Vince, in your career, were there any interesting moments that you had, or any interesting moments that you had seemed to have had in your good run scoring career?
God, yeah, there'd be so many. I suppose, I'm very much especially at that level that you want to win win games and you want to win competition. So admittedly, yeah, you finish now and you look at the stats, and I was lucky to score a few runs and that, which are nice. But to me, it's the big things that stand out to me. I was, lucky enough to be part of 2 championship winning sides. Now, I think cricket players have either got wonderful memories and remember every stats or remember every game, or they're at the bottom end of the scale. And I actually look at books and think, well, I don't even remember playing in that game. So I'm real down it. But the big thing that, winning 2 county championships, that and the celebrations, and obviously with your teammate, because they're a massive part of your life, but also the supporters as well. So those 2 things would be way above individual. Lucky you go in and you played your part on those as well, and then obviously the first time you put your England shirt on, of course, a massive memory. So they'd certainly be the highlights.
Raj, coming on to, so when lots of kids these days, they obviously their parents send them to go and get better, which is obviously that's obviously really good. But do you think there's a time and a place for when parents need to just cut it off, let the coach do the job, kids do the training, and let them get on with it?
Yeah, definitely, because parents need to be aware that them being on top of the player all the time, they're just restricting the player. Okay. And if the player is playing a shot and looking at mom or dad, then it is better that mom and dad do the coaching rather than the coach do the coaching, isn't it? So they need to support, but at the same time, they need to let the player go also and understand. So that's a very fine balance to get. And I think it is a learning curve for the parents also, especially if the parent comes from a non-cricketing background or hasn't played any cricket himself or herself. Then it becomes quite difficult. And the other thing that becomes difficult is the parents' perception of cricket and the actually how the game is played has to be the same, because if they go on parallel lines, it affects the player, because you are giving the player one message, and in the car journey back home or on their dinner table, they're getting a completely different set of information. So then there is bound to be conflict, and who's going to suffer? The player, the young cricketer is going to suffer. So it's really important to get that balance. That's why when kids come to first class, I really make it a point to try to speak to parents and at least get them the idea of what we are trying to do. Then it becomes at least we are talking from the same hymn sheet as such. Like there was one example we had few weeks ago, when there was an Indian boy at our school, and this guy was a decent cricketer, but he used mainly batsman, used to bowl off spin, and but he was a part-time off spinner. He wasn't a genuine off spinner, and I would see he would bowl 4 good balls, and fifth, sixth ball he used to try and buy. Okay. And I figured that out, and I had quite a few chats with him. He wouldn't stop it. He just wouldn't complete the over. And then it came out through the chats that when he used to go home, his mum wasn't interested in the economy. His mum was also always asking him, how many wickets did you get? How many wickets did he get?
Yeah.
So if he went at 2.5 also in a one-day game, he wasn't happy. So that's really important to get that. As a coach, I think you got to get that right.
Vince, got anything to say on that?
Yeah, I just said, I think, 2 things for me. I think obviously the boys or girls who come to the first club, you all got dreams to play at the higher level. think that one of the challenges is the coaches as they progress and they may be in a district setup, a county setup, and then there's school, then there's parents, and there's a bit of club, and before long there's information coming from every direction, and all five of us sitting there now, we know it's a tough enough game as it is anyway, without knowing all this. So I think that's a real challenge with the coaching thing for everyone, and sometimes it's, I think, holding back, and luckily I'm sure we all do, it might be that communication with a county, and we're going to work on this at the moment, and so I think that, like Raj said, the communication with parents, the communication with outside coaches is so important as well.
Theo?
Yeah, that's a great point from Vince, because like I said, it's easy to go from a school during the day you see Raj, you do a net with him, then in the night time you've got Sussex, or you've got Surrey, and you're trying to make sure you please those coaches as well, because they're the ones that are going to be selecting you. So it is a bit of a toss up. Yeah, I mean, what Raj was saying about that bowler that you just toss them up, 2 balls to go. I think it's that sort of that pressure at home, like if you're going at home, you're having dinner with your parents or your brother and sister, and they've got high expectations of you. So you also want to make sure you're doing, whatever your mum and dad say, you often think is right. So it's hard to clear that out, flush that out. But I guess when a player matures and gets older, they do seem to see the rough from the smooth, and they can not only do things for themselves, which is what we're quite big on, is create independent players who can think for themselves, rather than looking at mum or dad or looking at a coach, because at the end of the day, that the player is the one that's going to be in the middle making decisions. So a coach's role, is important, but as that player becomes more developed and gets older, it's really important that player takes ownership for their own game. And if it comes to us and says, right, I want to work on this today, that for me tells me this player is serious about wanting to improve. Like, what are you struggling with in the middle, rather than coming and going, oh, what do you want to work on today? Sort of like that mindset of, right, here are my weaknesses, this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm bad, this is what I want to work on, this is what I need to improve on to get better. So I feel like a player really takes ownership of their own game and use coaches, to help them, rather than doing what the coaches want to do.
Darren, is that quite an important thing, taking ownership on your own game?
Yeah, really agree with that, what Theo has just said. To me, it's a fantastic feeling when a player comes into a session and walks straight up to you and says, well, can I work on this today? It's because, as Theo said, they're taking ownership of their own game. They're understanding what their strengths and weaknesses are, or starting to understand that. And also the other point I would make for what Raj said about non-cricketing parents, I think it's very important to understand that there's a lot of failure associated with this game. And batsmen especially do fail quite a lot. So if they've got out for a duck or not a lot, don't give them the 3rd degree in the car on the way home. Just appreciate that that's what happens in this game. So, and if you train a lot and do the basics a lot, then you do get the high points when you score a lot of runs. But there will be points when you fail a few times.
Ollie, can I just? One of the things I was going to say, I think this is something that's a big part of our challenge all as coaches as well, is the way the game's changed as well, because of all the dynamics of it. People want to hit 4s, they want to hit 6s, they want to hit boundaries, and likewise with the bowlers. I'm sure Raj and you guys I get the same with bowlers at school. They'll dot 4 balls up in good areas, and you think, oh, brilliant, and then it's trying to bowl that magic ball or the Yorker, and next minute they've gone for 6 or 8.
Slurble, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think back in the era that we played, and you look at Ashwin and Patel. I know that the wickets have been in their favour, but one thing that built up pressure. And I think that was the thing, as the eras that we played in, that when I bowled in a championship game, you're really looking to put the ball in a challenging area as often as you can, so that hopefully if that batsman gets bored or his footwork doesn't happen, or all of a sudden it swings a bit more from that area, you're on the money. And I think if you go back over, I realise you have to vary things in the shorter game, but certainly in the test match, you know, Jimmy Anderson as well. Predominantly, it's because the ball's in a challenging area time after time, you know, creating that pressure. So I think it's that balancing, but also, as we all know, the game's changing and realising those challenges that come with it as well as a coach.
Often what I've found is, like, because the game's changed so much, the role models in the game have changed. So, you know, if you watch TV now, Test cricket is on, but there's also a T20 game a day. There's also, you know, a variety of leagues to watch. You can really watch so much T20 over the years. And Kieran Pollard hitting 6 sixes the other day, or watching, you know, Rohit Sharma construct an innings on a tough wicket in India. Probably, if I'm a kid, I'm going to want to watch the 6 sixes. So I'm going to, whereas probably when you're playing, Vince and Raj was playing, Test cricket was, and the longer format was, the pinnacle of the, well, seemed like the pinnacle of the game. Lots of players playing in county cricket that you would have played up against. Now it just doesn't happen because of the amount of cricket going on and the various leagues.
So Vince, coming on to those role models, obviously yourself, you were one, and then you played with players. Please tell me if I'm wrong. Alex Stewart and Nick Knight and Darren Gough were three of the stand-up people that you see on telly at the moment. Playing with them, was that quite good to get good experience?
Yeah, look, cricket's wonderful at the moment with all the bits going on, like Theo just said. But you know, I also was very blessed to play in the era that I did with, you know, those guys, of course, were brilliant. You know, the regular Test cricketers you were playing against in county cricket, but more importantly was, you know, your overseas superstars were coming to play full seasons of county cricket. You know, I was very lucky to captain Anil Kumble at Leicester and Javagal Srinath, who were sensational people and sensational cricketers, and you know, Phil Simmons, West Indian, but you know, every side had them. You know, there's Wasim Akram and Curtly Ambrose, Courtney Walsh, you know, all those superstars, and that also filtered through to, you know, there's a stage where every county had 2 overseas pros, so even the second team would have a top international, you know, as a young lad you're playing against them. So you know, being that era, you know, you couldn't but learn from them, to be honest, because they, you know, they was with you every day, every practice, and all had a wonderful work ethic. So extremely lucky.
I suppose your debut against Australia, facing Glenn McGrath and having Shane Warne on the opposite side must have been quite daunting in a way.
Yeah, you know, very much so. And you know, I think those 2 guys, again, about the discipline. McGrath, just a wonderful bowler, never gave you anything. Yeah, and Shane Warne, for me, certainly before his shoulder operation, you know, you could hear the ball fizzing as it came down, and the pace and the variation. So yeah, fantastic. And the Aussie crowd's always a bit of a challenge anyway. So no, very lucky to be part of that.
Raj, coming just last few words. Do you say that the game has significantly changed since when Vince was playing? But obviously we know T20 has. But how much do you think the coaching has changed since then?
Coaching, if you think at the level we coach, I don't think there needs to be too much of change. The coaching changes need to go up the chain. Here, our main challenge is to make sure people understand, as we have said, that to play the shorter format also and be successful, you need good fundamentals. You're not going to go there without having good fundamentals. There is no shortcut to doing that. So I think it looks like coaching has changed. At our level, I don't think it has changed much, except that we need to rein in the mindset. There's one thing I wanted to add is one of the biggest challenges we have at this level again is field setting, right? Getting field setting.
Yeah.
I mean, I can guarantee it now that any 5 of us, if we go and set a field, it's going to be more or less 90% the same, depending on individuals. There might be one or two fielders up or outside, according our personal reading. But 90 to 95%, it will be in the same places. But that's because all of us have played cricket and understand cricket how it works. But to get that across to players and more so some parents is massive challenge, because everyone is not going to bowl with slip silly point short leg. If you're a spinner, firstly you have to be good enough to control and get those areas consistently, that someone is ready to sit at silly point short leg for you. But people don't understand that how important it is to get that accuracy before you earn that field. Similarly, they see a seamer bowling and they want three slips and two gullies. Now, is that guy quick enough that the ball will carry to the third slip?
Hmm.
So these are things we need to explain, and I think these are quite the challenging stuff. I don't know, Vince, would you agree with this?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's so tough. And going back to those South African days, Raj, I used to take one of the under 13 side, and often against the bigger schools, they were very happy at the time for the captain to come and stand next to the coach at square leg, and they could have a conversation, and the coach could even say, look, you really need to move him to there or whatever. It wasn't the coach shouting across the pitch. And I'm very much for that, because I think at that level, if that can happen early and it's happening out there as the game's going on over a short period of time, I'm sure the other players and certainly the captains, they then start playing to proper fields, which is only going to help them as they progress. So certainly a tough area.
Yeah. Darren and Theo, anything to add?
Yeah, 100% agree with that. It's my big annoyance with youth cricket. A coach leaning on a sight screen just yelling to a captain, put your fielder, put him there, put him there, put him there. Stand next to him and explain to him why, etc. Or do that in a training session. But don't lean on a sight screen and yell things. Really don't like that.
Theo?
And well, I mean, having played for Raj whilst at school for a lot of years, and I remember my older brother Joe, he used to bowl off spin, and he didn't do much with it, but I remember him taking forfers because we just set the perfect field for him. And it won us games. It made Joe a successful bowler. Like field placing, it really can. Batting and bowling, fielding, yeah, important parts of the game, of course they are. But field setting, if you set your fields right, you can save 20 runs. You can lose 20, 30 runs. A bowler might think he's bowling badly, but he's not, just because the field's set wrong. He's then kicking the ground, looking at the ball, looking at his grip and stuff, but actually he just hasn't got the fine leg where it should be or something. So field placing is definitely, for me, massive part of the game.
Right. Raj?
Before you guys go off today, finally, I'll tell you an incident. And now we are laughing at it. At that point, it wasn't funny to me. I was actually taken in front of a disciplinary committee because of field setting. And that is how challenging it can get. Okay, honestly, this happened. We were playing a game. The opposition were about 30 for 3 in 15 overs. I went, no, not, yeah, 15 overs. They were 30 for 3. I went to the loo and drinks was at 18, I think. I came out and the board was 80 odd for 3. So, and the bowlers who were bowling well at that point. So I didn't understand. So I went in at drinks. I asked the captain what had happened. And there was one particular guy in the side, and he just wouldn't buy it. And the parent didn't help. So he was a leg spinner who bowled maybe 2 balls on the spot. And then there was a full toss, there was a short one, but he wouldn't have the deep cover out, deep mid out, or long on out. He had this idea that Shane Warne doesn't bowl with that field, and I will not bowl with that field. So I said to the captain, mate, You heard of the 10 commandments, right? The 11th is, if he doesn't bowl to the field you're setting, then he shall not bowl. As simple as that. Because I can't let the game go away because of, what he feels like. And that landed me in trouble. I was in front of a disciplinary committee. So we talk about challenges.
Yeah. Right, I think we're going to wrap it up there. So, Vince, thank you ever so much for coming on. It's been
Absolute
very
pleasure.
interesting to hear your international career and county career. As usual, thank you, Darren. Thank you, Raj.
Thank you.
Theo. Thank you. Please just go and follow us on all of on Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, on the podcast. And at the moment, it's bye for now.
Thanks a lot.